appreciate you taking the time out of your day. This is being recorded, so if you have to pop out and come back, we'll have a recording for you. We also encourage comments and engagement in the chat. So if you have anything that you want to say to our panelists, good job, that's what the chat is for. If you want to submit any questions for our panelists to get to during the Q&A session, there is a Q&A portion of your panel here within Zoom, so feel free to do that. You have been muted upon entry, and so you'll have to put any chat questions that you have that way, and we can get to them as we go along. So without further ado, let's make some introductions here today. So my name is Abby Kane. I'm a team lead of customer success here at OnBoard. I've been with the organization for around 5 years now, and I have had the opportunity to work with a lot of different customers of all different sizes and industries. I'm looking forward to hosting this webinar today and talking to you with our wonderful panel guests. So first and foremost, I'd like to welcome Rebecca Argabright Grove, VP of Strategic Governance and Professional Ethics at the American Occupational Therapy Association. So Rebecca is a licensed occupational therapist and worked for 16 years in direct service and administrative roles in public schools. She's the Vice President of Governance and Professional Ethics for the American Occupational Therapy Association. Rebecca has over 20 years of volunteer service in a variety of local, state, and national boards and governance bodies. She is a fellow of the American Occupational Therapy Association and an Award of Merit recipient of the Virginia Occupational Therapy Association. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to hearing from you. And next, we have Kim Robinette, who is an executive assistant at Pinnacle Bank. Kim Robinette works in assisting the C-suite team members in a myriad of ways, including administrating and coordinating the information activities related to corporate governance. She's a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, retiring in 2014 with 20 years of faithful service working in the air traffic control technical field. She earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in 2018 from the University of Virginia in Leadership and Public Policy, which has equipped her well in her current role. Welcome, Kim. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Great. Can't wait to hear from you. And then last but certainly not least, we have Leah Gillitzer, Chief of Staff for Adelante Health. Leah is a seasoned executive professional with extensive experience in strategic business administration, financial management, and change management. With a proven track record in leading corporate initiatives and fostering organizational efficiency, Leah excels in aligning executive vision with operational execution. Equipped with a comprehensive educational background and industry-recognized certifications, Leah continues to drive impactful change and support leadership in achieving business objectives. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Wonderful. Well, you will hear from this wonderful distinguished panelists here in a bit. But before that, I just wanted to give you an overview of what we'll be discussing here today and why we're discussing it. So first and foremost, if you are familiar with OnBoard, you may already know this, but for those of you that aren't, OnBoard is here as a board management platform that designs digital experiences that make board meetings simple, secure, and effective. We do that through a myriad of digital offerings within our platform that helps run board or committee meetings and other functionalities that occur between those meetings. So if you are unfamiliar with OnBoard meetings, that is what we're here to do. And we're here to talk today about what OnBoard has done so far for the panelists here. So who we serve, we have over 5,000 board-led organizations, 12,000 committees, 55,000 meetings have been hosted within our platform. We have 100,000 subscribers in 50 plus countries. So we have the depth and breadth of experience with working with boards and committees. And we're excited to talk through how OnBoard as a platform has done that for each of these individuals. So just a quick overview of what we'll be discussing here today. So first thing, we want to discuss common committee management challenges that boards face And we'll want to explore how governance technology can enhance your committee management. And then finally, what you've all probably come here to listen to is to hear from Rebecca, Kim, and Leah as they share their experience with OnBoard as it relates to committees. So I'm excited for that portion. So we'll go ahead and get going to talk through some of those goals. Okay, sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit here. I'm going to go back one slide here, and we're going to go to our quick poll. So just to understand what you're doing here, what's your role within your organization when it comes to the board? So if you want to go ahead and answer that for us, it'll give us a better idea of who we're talking to today. Give you about 20-30 seconds to complete that, and then we'll go ahead and move on. Great. Looks like we have a majority of administrators, which is great. You're in the right place. That's who we talk to a lot of the time. I'm also excited to hear from the board members and nonprofit leaders as well. So talking about some committee management challenges. So these are just some things that we see that result with some friction when it comes to trying to manage certain committee functions. So first and foremost, you might be experiencing fragmented document storage. You might be doing a little bit on SharePoint, a little bit that are saved onto computers. People don't know things that are sent via email. You don't know where things are located. It's really tough for anybody that's there as an administrator trying to track things down or to point people in the right direction. And it's hard as a board member to figure out where something was posted when. Maybe poor roll-up process to the board. So maybe you're having a hard time with communication or having it function in a seamless way so that your board is functioning well with your committees and vice versa. Lack of clarity. So if you don't know your committee responsibilities, you don't have access to just a clear way for your committee to be functioning, ineffective communication and collaboration. Keeping committee work going between meetings can be tough if you don't have a way to facilitate that, which kind of plays into the lack of streamlined management. So if you can't really see what's going on between meetings, maybe there is a lot that is not functioning as you expect it to. So these are just some things. Maybe you experience one of these, maybe you experience multiple of them. I don't know if any of the panelists had anything to add here, if there was something that you also have a challenge with or have had challenges in the past when it comes to committees. If you don't have anything now, we can also talk about it when we get to the panelist discussion. Right. All right, well, moving right along here. I have a quick poll for you after we talk about some of those challenges. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to committee management? Would love to hear what you're currently experiencing, and then we can kind of talk through with our panelists how they have managed these particular challenges. I'll give you about 20 seconds or so to finish that up before we move on. All right. So it looks like a pretty good split between essentially all of them, between streamlining and empowering committees, between information sharing and lack of tools to effectively manage and support your committees, which is about right on what we would expect to see for within your organizations based on what we've worked with in the past with certain boards and committees. So how can a tool like OnBoard help solve those particular issues when it comes to committee management? First and foremost, a platform like OnBoard can provide one centralized place for all of your board and committee related information. So it can be the single source of truth. As a member of the customer success team, I always like to tell my customers that you want OnBoard to be the place that if it's board related or committee related, they know that it's going to be an OnBoard, whether that's the roles and terms that they have for that committee or that board, whether it's documents from archival material that you need or anything committee or board related. So you can house it in one place and you're able to track insights with the committee. And it's just one seamless platform to allow for all of your information to be in one place. And that can relieve so many headaches, not only for yourselves as maybe an administrator, but especially for your board members, that they know that if it's going to be in a place, they don't have to search back through their email, it will be in OnBoard. The next thing is that it can streamline committee collaboration. I know that most boards, when they're looking for a new platform, are looking to have better collaboration with their board members and their committee members. So you can do that through different offerings that we have within OnBoard. So maybe you want to keep track of tasks. You as an admin want to make sure the tasks are getting done. You can assign and have visibility into tasks that are getting done. You can work from anywhere. You can have OnBoard downloaded on your tablet or phone and have that information available to you offline. Say you're boarding a plane, just gives your committee members and board members more opportunity to completely immerse themselves in the information that you provide. We also have messaging tools and conferencing tools. We have annotation tools that people can share those annotations so that you know if there's any questions or comments upcoming to the meeting, or committee members might have in between themselves. And then we're getting here near the end of one other way here that OnBoard or board platforms can help you is easy committee oversight and support. So you can have a good idea of how it is going within OnBoard. We have the ability to track analytics within OnBoard so you can see where people are spending a lot of their time when it comes to a board meeting or committee meeting. You can have resources within OnBoard that functions like a Dropbox that people can have access to. You can get really granular permissions within OnBoard, so you can make sure that your committee members are only seeing committee related documents. And if they roll up to the bigger board, you can do that as well. So you have the complete control within OnBoard to tailor the experience based on what your members need to be seeing. So that's always something that I know is a huge concern of boards and committees. You can also track roles and terms within OnBoard, which is a great way for people to stay abreast of when terms end, when they begin, and everything along those lines. So that takes us to the meat of this webinar, and that is our time with our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm going to have my panelists take themselves off mute, and we can chat through our first panel discussion question. So ladies, I'd love to hear from you. Committee structures can vary greatly from one board to the next, and we want to start with a brief overview from each of you about your relationship to your committees and what those committee environments look like. So what's your board structure and committee structure? Kim, I'll start with you if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. Can you hear me? I want to make sure.
I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when I walked in, our structure was we used OnBoard to coordinate with our external directors outside the organization and those external committees. And but we have a lot of internal committees that roll up to those larger ones. So what we did was we created a sub-org. And so now I have, one side of the platform that I use for external directors and the committees that they are on. And then I have a structure only for internal committees to the bank.
Oh, great. That's super interesting to hear about. I know that you can use multiple organizations or groups within one org. It's interesting to hear that you've structured it that way. What about you, Rebecca? How's your board structure?
Well, we are a membership-based organization. So we have a board of directors that acts as the corporate side of things, managing the operations for the organization. And then our other large body is called a representative assembly. And that is a group that's approximately 75 to 80 people, which handles professional issues, standards, and policies. So it's more kind of the political, outward-facing professional group.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a number of standing advisory committees that report to the board, and we have a number of standing advisory committees that report to the RA. So we have chosen to select and use OnBoard with 4 specific committees that really have the highest level of confidentiality needs with the work that they do. So our board of directors uses it. Our ethics commission does it due to the nature of ethics violations and complaints that we process. Our volunteer leadership development committee also uses OnBoard. They handle all of our elections and our applications for appointed positions. So any incoming volunteer gets handled by that group. And again, you can imagine the level of confidentiality that we have to utilize when we're doing that type of work. And then, as I mentioned previously, the representative assembly, not as much for the confidentiality of their work because they are very open and public facing, and any member can attend and observe a meeting. But we needed to have a place with a group of 75 to 80 to really be effective and efficient in terms of how we share and exchange information, how we handle a vote of 80 people virtually, because we do our work virtually, and how we just, it's a lot of moving parts with that many bodies and minds to be able to manage. So OnBoard has really helped us with the unique needs of the various committees, commissions, et cetera, within our organization to create the tailored experience to make them most effective and efficient in their work.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think that your point on the confidentiality and the high level of sensitive material that you are dealing with, to have those committees within OnBoard that you can be sure to lock that down to them, is a huge reason why I see a lot of people turning to a platform like OnBoard, where they can make sure that people are getting the right material. So thanks for bringing that up. It's also interesting to hear about your structure as well. Maybe people are familiar with it. Maybe it doesn't look like other people's boards, but I know that OnBoard can be used in various different use cases. So it's great to hear about your use case as well. And then Leah, I'd love to hear from you about your board and committee structure, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, of course. So we're a nonprofit FQHC, so we do as well have confidential information. So our board is comprised of about 5 different committees, and each of those committees rolls up into the board meeting and all their information for the most part. And so we just use it really to manage that information and data and build those books in there so that each committee has that access to the information that they need before their committee.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I also good to hear again the confidentiality aspect of it as well. That completely makes sense. I appreciate you for sharing that. Thanks for everybody for your answers. That was fantastic. Really, one of the things that we've already touched on in our previous conversation, and what I hear you all hinting at, is the ability to have it as your single source of truth within OnBoard. So I would love to hear a little bit more about that. Leah, I'll start with you. What is one of your favorite use cases or features? Can you expand a little bit about the benefits you find in, say, like within the resources folder?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So we export all of our board meeting minutes, our committee meeting minutes into the resource folder. And then we're able to pull those, we get audited all the time. So we have one single source. We can pull all of our meeting minutes, use those resources folders to organize what we need to organize. So we're always prepared. And also we use the signature feature so our board secretary can sign the minutes in OnBoard. And it really has streamlined our process and really it's helped us make it more seamless so that we don't have issues and we're always prepared for whatever comes.
That's fantastic. You're using all of my favorite buzzwords of streamlined, seamless.
It makes it easy.
That's what we exactly hope it's going to be. So it's always such a happy thing to hear from customers that is hitting the mark for you. I'm glad to hear that. I know that, working all of those features together and having it a seamless experience can be really beneficial for hopefully you as an admin, but hopefully also for all the other people that are interacting with it, hearing that people are putting all of the information in the resource folder, having the e-signatures, people can sign within OnBoard, they can go to a specific resource folder is, in my mind, a huge benefit. I'm glad to hear that it is.
Yeah, and also we get a lot of documents from a lot of different people within the organization,
Yeah.
whether it's from compliance or our quality team and different things like that. So it's really great because some are Word, some are PDF, some are, you know, and it really helps because it pulls it all together into one document that you can PDF print
Yes.
out, and it's one item instead of 50 different documents.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite features as well, that people can put it in Excel and put in a Word document, and then it will all spit out that one PDF that you don't have to spend time compiling it all into one. You can also add a table of contents that's, you know, that's functional, that it can go directly to a particular section. That's fantastic to hear. I'm glad that it's saving you time. Really, next I wanted to throw it over to you, Kim. I know this was also the single source of truth was a benefit that you kind of talked about. Can you tell us about how you've used this functionality to streamline document management?
Yeah, when I was reading through the slides, it's funny, out of all the phrases you use, single source of truth really resonated with me. And of course, the challenge before I got here, it was things that were fragmented. They were, you know, in someone's email or on SharePoint, maybe some of it on OnBoard. And so just like my fellow panelists, I think it was Leah mentioned, we get audited. So we want to have trust and confidence that people who have a need to know have access to the information, and they're pulling the correct information. And so I looked at OnBoard as a repository of legitimate and sanitized information, and like a repository, like a library.
Yeah.
And not only does it act as a library, but it facilitates research and retrieval activities when those requests are presented. But there's a transcendent nature to OnBoard, in that I am equipping whoever takes my place in the future. So they're going to have access to that you know, granted, of course, as long as we keep using OnBoard. But so I'm sharing knowledge with whoever is going to sit in this seat in the future, or, you know, when someone is succeeded in the C-suite. So single source of truth, and that truth is transcendent.
That's incredible. That's such a great point to bring up when it comes to how not only having it a single source of truth for your role and for your board members, but also when you get audited. I know that a lot of people are thinking about that when it comes to board related materials. If audit is something that they have to be cognizant of, that then if you are sending things over email and then also putting them on SharePoint and also downloading them onto your computer, which one is the finalized version? And so having OnBoard where you can go to a particular meeting, they need May 6th meetings. And so you can go and pull that meeting, pull those minutes, send the signed version of them.
Yes.
Instead of searching all the places. That's so great. And the idea of succession planning, I think that's also something people don't realize is a big deal until it happens and they don't have a plan in place. Obviously, everybody expects things to continue the way that they are, but people inevitably move around. And if you don't have a good way of transitioning the work and the materials to somebody new, that can be a huge time suck for everybody involved. So that was a really great point that I wasn't prepared for you to talk about, but is such a great thing to bring up for people to just have in mind how this works for them. Great. Okay. And then Rebecca, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about, you mentioned logistical challenges. And so can you speak to how having all these materials in one secure place promotes efficiency for your organization?
Sure. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Leah and Kim said in terms of managing and audits. I won't speak specifically to audits for AOTA, but one of the features that I really like that increases efficiency is the ability to, you give people permission to join OnBoard and you can set the type of access that they have generally right off the top of using the platform. But then for each meeting and even for each agenda item within a meeting, you can set permissions. So I'll use an example of our ethics commission. If we have a member of our ethics commission who has to recuse from a particular case, I can give them access to the entire meeting, except for that one agenda item that is the case that they have had to recuse from. So being able to really tailor and set those individual permissions is helpful. We also have a user license of 120, and we're not quite at 120, but I'd say roughly between about 110 and 120 users of the platform. Our terms tend to be 3-year terms, but all 110 to 20 people don't have the exact same 3-year term. And our big turnover is July 1 each year. So on July 1 each year, or June 30th after 5 p.m., we can go and we can not only remove people from access with one click or toggle, we can wipe all of the devices that they have ever used to access information. So it does create a level of security that is very helpful when you're managing a large number of people that are using the platform in different capacities. The other things that I wanted to talk a little bit about is just the fact that people don't read emails. I mean, I've got thousands of unread emails in my box. I hate to admit that, but we cannot keep up with the amount of information that is coming towards us. And a lot of times, if you're trying to send, like the pre-onboard days, we were trying to send things with attachments, and many mail systems won't allow things to be sent depending on how large the attachment is, or they will not allow them to be received depending on how large they are. And they'll send them directly to spam. So relying on email as a primary form of communication, I feel for committees and commissions is really just outdated. And my perception, I'm not in the information cybersecurity world, but my perception is that the cybersecurity risks and challenges continue to increase. And this tool really allows you to safeguard against so many of those things. You can determine that I do not want to give any user of this meeting permission to download this particular document. So you just have so many different ways that you can create safety mechanisms around information and around who has access to what using this platform. And as both ladies have previously said, if this is your one place to go, there's no excuse for someone to say, oh, I didn't receive it. Oh, I didn't see it. Because you can go in and you can look and see if people are accessing, if they're engaging, etc. So it's just been a wonderfully robust tool to help us when we've got a lot of moving parts.
That is all fantastic. I think the things that I heard you say that I really latched onto, the outdatedness of using email, not only for security reasons, which is a huge deal. How many times have we seen massive data leaks from email? But also there are issues when you're trying to send massive files over email. I mean, we just had an issue. We're preparing for this webinar of trying to get a document over to you, and just the firewalls that are associated with emails, trying to keep it safe because it isn't secure, can then cause some real problems and efficiency. And then also, just so everybody knows, whether you're familiar with OnBoard or not, just the functionality of security is of paramount importance. That's what our whole platform is built around. And you can lock it down for internal security of making sure that the wrong person doesn't see the wrong thing. And also externally, that you can delete things, delete everything, wipe people's devices remotely should they lose it, or if they no longer need access to OnBoard and you're worried that they have it still on their device. And then also controlling the downloads. That's another big thing. I know IT people love that. Maybe your board of directors a little bit less so, that they can't download things onto the computer, but less that is saved on someone's personal
Yes.
or work device,
Mhm.
the less you have to worry about it. So the more they can just access it via the cloud, the better everything's going to be for you as an organization to protect yourselves and to protect your board members. So thanks for bringing all of that up. That's fantastic. And next, what I wanted to chat about here was when it comes to managing committees or your different user groups, there can be a lot of different levels of access. We've talked about this. One thing that many of our users rely on are the user permissions, the ability to control the access, as we've talked about. I'd love to hear how you set up your permissions, whether it be in the directory, and I know some of you touched on this, or in the meetings themselves, locking those down. Does anybody have specific thoughts? I know, Leah, we had talked about this previously. Was this something you'd wanted to add on to?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we do it by committee. So each committee gets assigned to, each person gets assigned to the committee for the duration of the year. Our board terms as well are 3 years, but our committee terms, we kind of look at those once a year. So we can assign them to that, and then we can give them permission within the system to see the committee and all the documents that are in there. So it makes it really easy that each committee has all the documents. If you're not on the committee, you typically don't have access unless you're the board chair. But other than that, that's how we structure it. It just makes it a lot easier to make sure everyone who's in that committee has what they need. And then all those documents, for the most part, end up rolling up into a board meeting.
That completely makes sense. And for those of you that are familiar or maybe not familiar with our groups aspect with the OnBoard that Leah is touching on, is that you can permission groups of people that you set up within the directory, so that say you have a committee that you want to make sure that that committee, everybody in it, is going to be added to certain meetings. You can add that group to a meeting, and people are going to get permissions based on that group. And then if somebody leaves that group, they then will no longer have access to that meeting because they were permissioned from that meeting based on the group that they were in. And so this is great if people are swapping around committees. This is great if somebody is, getting booted off of one and added to another one. It makes things very clean. So thank you so much, Leah, for that explanation. Kim, I hear you nodding along. I'd just love to hear about your structure. I love that you also are engaged in this behavior.
Yeah, I really liked that feature because sometimes we do change our directors. They'll be removed from one committee and added to another. And so when I invite people, when I created my committees, I created the corresponding groups, and the committee members are in that group. And so if someone changes, I remove them from that committee, so then they can no longer see those meetings that they were a part of. But then when I add them to a new committee, and because I invite people by group, then they have that history. They can look at the committees in the past that they're now a part of that committee, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I really like that feature. And like you said, I do have a group of administrators, and we made a separate policy letter. We are to be assigned to every object with admin permissions, and it's by other creators of meetings. So that way we have visibility on everything that's going on in OnBoard. But that was a neat feature, and I think you even recommended that in your training.
Great.
To create an admin group. So
yeah,
I really like this feature a lot.
Good. Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I'm so glad your organization does that. And for those of you that have OnBoard or are thinking about OnBoard, the nice thing about OnBoard it can get very granular. So say Kim and Leah and Rebecca are all admins within OnBoard. If they create something and they don't add other admins, these people, although that they are admins within OnBoard, aren't going to see it. And that's intentional to give organizations the ability to lock things down, even amongst admins within OnBoard. But a way to make sure that in case you want all the admins to be on everything, creating a user group called admins, and adding that user group will allow for anybody added to that group to have access to everything that you have. So I love that workaround. I want more people to know about it. If you're thinking about implementing, or already have OnBoard available to you, that you can start using that as a best practice and make sure that everyone has access to everything that they need. So, Rebecca, I know you talked about locking things down specifically. We can even talk about it in meetings. You can exclude people from certain sections. How is that structured for you? How do you do permissions within OnBoard for your organization?
Well, I largely talked about it previously, but one thing I wanted to highlight here that I think complements what was previously stated was the contributor role. People could send us reports by email that we have to then download, save, and upload and attach as an agenda item in OnBoard, or we can actually permission users to be a contributor, which means I've got the outline of the meeting agenda set up. You've got permission to go ahead and upload your own reports. So it saves a step and really creates and fosters a team virtual environment to make sure that all of the critical documents are in place. I think it's a huge time saver in terms of, it not having to be one person that has to do it all, but having that sense of shared ownership for the work that's going to be done in preparation for the meeting.
That is a fantastic point. I'm so glad you brought it up because, we've been talking about material access in the past of making sure that the lockdown so people are accessing the right material, but it's also true when we're talking about material upload, material when people are working on it, is that you can also tailor permissions so that if you have multiple people that need to upload materials to a particular meeting, you can do that. And so you don't have to be carrying the load alone, or have people sending you things via email that you then have to upload, which kind of negates the fact of the security aspect that you're trying to work with when it comes to OnBoard. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm so glad you did, because that is something that I'm sure all people that are looking at a board solution are familiar with, of just the ongoing tasks of board management, getting the materials ready is something that you want to be sharing the load when it comes to administration. So
let me add one more thing here as well.
Sure.
We've been talking a lot about access to sort of documents in a meeting agenda, but the same types of permissions are also very helpful with voting. Many of our groups have public members or consumer members, and some of them are non-voting, or they may have an elect position for a year that is a non-voting position. So if you're using OnBoard to vote on motions and agenda items, you can also set those permissions for voting, which is so much easier, especially if you imagine that body of 75 to 80 people that I was talking about. We can have anywhere from about 5 to 10 individuals who are non-voting. So we clearly can set that in advance, and we know when we get a vote count that only the people that should have access to vote are the ones that are participating in that vote. So you can do a lot of that pre-work, which makes the meeting run that much more seamlessly in real time.
Great. I'm glad you brought it up to the points of the other aspects of the portal. We're talking a lot about our meetings functionality here, or resources where you can have additional documents. But it's true when it comes to the action items within OnBoard too, is that it can be permissioned and tailored to who needs to be voting, who needs to be part of the discussion for those action items like approvals. So that's fantastic. And then really we have one last board or committee centric pain point that we want to talk about, is the inability to facilitate productive work and collaboration at the committee level between meetings. I'd love to hear first from you, Rebecca. I know you just got done chatting, but I know you talked about the electronic voting. Can you share some more insights of how you leverage different features for collaboration?
Absolutely. Most of our committees are across time zones of the United States, all the way from Eastern. I don't know the name of the time zone for Hawaii, but we've got people up from one end to the other. And so the ability to use OnBoard in that way, particularly because you can use it through the mobile app or the desktop. We have had people that are balancing their home life at the same time that they are participating in a meeting, because it's dark in their part of the world and it's still daylight in another person's part of the world. What we have also found is sometimes, and it's when we get a lot of people on voting, there's always someone who says, oh, I can't figure out how to vote, or their internet may be slow and it's not refreshing quickly enough for them. If you can watch a meeting on your desktop, but you can have your app open and you can do your vote by phone, which makes the voting so easy. It's like you've got this little voting machine right in your hand while you're still paying attention to the big screen. You can be walking around. We've had people participate from their children's sports practices, wherever they may be in the world, in a hotel, etc. I also really like the ability to use the messaging and the reminder feature, because people often forget. So a couple hours before we're going to have a really big meeting, we'll push out a reminder. Don't forget to check this. Don't forget to log on 15 minutes early. We do have some groups that vote between meetings, where we do votes without a meeting, in essence. And that has been a lot easier than trying to find a common time for 6 or 8 people across time zones to get together to do a quick approval of a couple of documents. If we can just set up an electronic vote and, it's open for, you get to set the amount of days and the amount of time you want that to remain open. So you can get work done really easily in between your larger formal meetings as well. For one thing, when I talk about those votes between meetings, you really want to check with where your organization is incorporated. For example, we're incorporated in the District of Columbia, and the district does not allow our board to do electronic votes unless it passes with 100% majority. They've tried to do some votes between meetings, and if there's anybody that's a no or an abstain, the DC code will not allow us. That's not a viable vote. So then they have to schedule a meeting. So you want to be aware of the law that governs your board or your organization when you're thinking about setting up and using electronic votes. I think that's an important piece for you all to have. From the administrative side, one of the things that saves me a lot of time in between meetings, instead of opening a brand new meeting and recreating an agenda, especially with my ethics commission, for example, because we meet every month, I will just duplicate the previous month's meeting, and then I tweak the agenda a little bit. I add in what isn't there. I drop out what I don't need. And it is way easier than starting over from scratch. So those are just some ways, both from the user side as well as the administrative side, that I think is really helpful in terms of doing work in between formal meetings.
That's fantastic. You brought up some really great key points. One is there is a great way to continue work between meetings, and maybe it is not allowed in your bylaws or for whatever your governing board is. So that's always something you want to be keeping in mind, that this will apply obviously to a board management software. So thanks for bringing that up. That's all fantastic to hear. And also any tool that you use outside of meeting can be used inside a meeting as well. So messenger tool, if people need to have conversations in the meeting that you're allowed to have, you can do that there. So that's fantastic. Kim, I'd love to hear about you. I know specifically you use like the board assessment tool for your board assessments. I'd love to hear how you capture information digitally. And if you could just elaborate on that collaboration and communication with your board.
Yeah, that was a new feature we added. I had previously done like a manual assessment at a committee level. And this year, the CEO wanted to do a board assessment at the highest level, and OnBoard has that feature. So I talked with a representative there, and I found out like you guys have a a repository of questions that I can pull from. I can tweak those questions. I can categorize those questions. So as the person who's building the assessment, OnBoard made that super easy. And then to deploy the assessment, like you said, work between meetings. You know, at OnBoard, we announced that this was going to be coming out. I built the assessment. They did it in between that month, you know, in between meetings. And then we were able to discuss it at the next meeting with metrics. So, you know, we used the Likert scale on a lot of those questions. And so we could look at where we were high or low, or where the median was. We could, you know, since I had organized it into categories, we could see what categories where we were weak or strong. But the other thing is with that board assessment, just like the fellow panelist, I think it was Leah, just said, I can duplicate that assessment next year. So I have just, you know, saved myself a ton of time by using this feature. And we also have metrics to compare with now from year to year. So that is a really cool feature.
Yeah, I love the duplication tool on lots of different things within OnBoard, so you don't have to recreate the wheel, especially when it comes to something like an assessment or a meeting that you have to do. Leah, anything to add about collaboration within your board or committee? Love to hear from you if you have any thoughts there. Well, you're on mute, just so you know. That always happens to me.
Sorry, I just echo the same sentiments of the others in the group. The duplication tool makes it very convenient. All of our meetings are monthly, so it's really a repetitive situation where you're just like going over the same exact items. Some things are tweaked. Sometimes you have some different reports that you have to do and things like that. But yeah, it would just be the same as the rest of the group.
Ah, that's fantastic.
Abby, can I add something
yeah,
else that I
please,
thought
jump
about?
in.
I don't know if Kim and Leah are using this feature. We don't push our volunteers to necessarily use this, but the meeting feedback review, we always have a few people that end up giving us some feedback, and we really take that into account. I mean, that's something where we probably need to encourage and push some communication around getting people to do that. But I think it's a really important quality improvement piece of supporting committees and commissions to ask them to provide feedback so that you can enhance the meeting experience, you can streamline your agenda, you can have your pulse on what worked and what didn't work well for them to continue to increase the engagement of the group. So that's another piece I wanted to make sure people were able to hear about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point too. I don't know if Kim or Leah, if you've ever had anybody do that or you are putting those out, that's something automatically that gets sent out after every meeting from OnBoard unless you choose to turn that off. And something cool about that is that not only, is OnBoard there for collaboration when it comes to board materials, but hopefully collaboration in how the meeting is run and how meetings are going and some feedback that they can provide that you as an admin team can start to facilitate better meetings based on the feedback that you're receiving through OnBoard. So that's a great call out. I am glad you brought that up as well. That can be viewed in your analytics so you can see not only what people are accessing and how much they are, but also what they thought of the meeting if people provide feedback. Great. Well, thank you all so much for all that insight. Please feel free to stick around here as we're going to go into the Q&A session. But before we do, we wanted to have one last poll to hear if anybody would want a chance to talk about OnBoard more, if you're interested in learning more after this webinar. So if you go ahead and take a second to fill that out, that would be fantastic. You can choose whether you want a brochure or if you want a demo or nothing at this point. Right. Okay, well, we're going to be moving into the question and answer portion of this session. So if you have any questions, feel free to put that in that Q&A portion. I'll be checking the chat as well, but it's just easier for me as the webinar host to have it in the Q&A. So first I'll go here in the chat and make sure we get everything out of there first. So first question is there a feature to schedule a meeting on Zoom or a scheduling assistant, for example, when trying to find the best date of a meeting among board members? I'll go ahead and take that since it's a functionality related question. So when it comes to a scheduling assistant, there isn't one currently within our functionality. You can schedule a Zoom meeting. We do have a Zoom integration where you can put Zoom information that gets automatically generated from your Zoom link. You can also just put that in manually. If you do put the integration that does sort of like a picture-in-picture, I always recommend that people test it out to see how they like it the best. And then this one I think is definitely for our panelists. I'd be happy to have any of you, all three of you, one of you jump in about this, but has using OnBoard increased your response to surveys and committee meeting attendance?
I would say some to the committee meeting attendance, but definitely responses. We do use the a consent agenda, so we do voting before and things like that. And we've had some emergency votes that we've had to do, and we've actually gotten the 100% participation, which I don't even think I could have gotten that on an email. So it really has helped us as an organization.
That's so fantastic. I'm so glad to hear. I know it's like right when you log in, if you have something outstanding, you know, OnBoard's like, go ahead and take that care of that.
Yeah,
So
I'm able to email them. It emails them. I'm like, guys, I need your vote urgently. And most, I mean,
yes.
we've gotten the participation much more.
Good. I'm so glad.
Same thing.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, same here. The biggest challenge is that group of 75 to 80. I do believe that OnBoard has increased the participation of that group in particular. Prior to OnBoard, we were just doing things by Zoom, and before Zoom, we were just, we have sort of an internal social platform, and literally people would discuss things in discussion threads asynchronously and then vote asynchronously. And then we would have to go through these long threads and count the number of yeses or nos, almost like tallying everything up. So I think the fact that this is a very streamlined and efficient process makes people want to come and participate, because it's like, oh, it's really easy. I can hop on, I can do this from my phone, I can be off camera, and I can still be managing the rest of my life at the same time that I'm fulfilling my volunteer duties.
Yeah, that's fantastic that it does like fit into people's lives. And so it's easier to have increased responses when people can just have it in their life.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I launched that board assessment, you know, I launched it to 20 people, but it would tell me, you know, my numbers of where I was at upon completion. And the neat feature was when I could send out reminders, I could choose to remind everyone, regardless if they've had finished or not, or just the people who hadn't finished, because I set it up anonymously, so I didn't know who hadn't finished. So yeah, and I ended up with 100%.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that. That's such a success story. Well, I'm going to check the chat and the Q&A one last time. If you have anything that you might need, feel free to put that in the chat. I'll give it about 30 more seconds. And after that, we'll be wrapping up here for today. All right, I don't see anything else coming in through the chat. So thank you all. Thank you so much, Kim, Leah, and Rebecca. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with us. I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say. I'm sure that our audience members did as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.